I want to tell you a story before we begin. It is pertinent to what we're going to be looking at today, but I will never forget the day that we found out that Chloe was pregnant for the first time. Very exciting, brilliant day. And then a couple of weeks later, Chloe was experiencing some pain in her side, and we were very concerned and worried about that. It was in the height of COVID. We knew that there had been complications in the family before, so we rushed her up to the Ulster hospital, got a wee phone call in. They knew we were coming and all that sort of stuff. And Chloe walks out. I'm not allowed in. I'm in the car because it's COVID, and I'm surprised that they even seen her. And we walked in. She's about 6 weeks pregnant at this stage, and she walks in, and it seems like an absolute eternity until she walks out. But then she walks out with a big grin on her face, and I'm thinking, happy days, this is really good. And she hands me a picture. She doesn't say anything. She hands me a picture, and she says, do you notice anything? And I'm sitting looking, and I'll be honest, I'm a guy. I'm looking at this going, oh yeah, he/she is beautiful, yeah. It's a wee dot. She goes, no, have a look closer. And I am told that I went sheet white whenever I asked this question. But I went, why is there 2 dots? Why is there 2 dots? Twins. We're talking about a set of twins today. And we'll come to them a little bit later. But there's lots of famous twins. And I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping that Jack and Mia would be here to help me, because some of them are going to come up on the screen, and I want to see if anybody knows who they are. Some of them are fictional twins, and some of them are real life twins, okay? So everybody should be able to get at least one. Does anybody know who these 2 ladies are? Yes, they're the Olsen twins, Mary Kate and Ashley. Very good. Anybody know who these 2 cheeky chappies are? Yeah, Dylan and Cole Sprouse. I grew up watching a show called The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and it was these pair here. But they are real life twins, as you can see. Now we're going to move to the fictional ones, because there's a lot less famous twins than you actually think there are, right? Anybody know who these 2 are? Yeah, they're not Star and War though, so Luke Skywalker and what's his? Princess Leia, yeah. They are twins, which makes their kissing scene really awkward. But in their defense, they didn't know, right, at the time. Okay, anybody know who these pair are? Sabrina does, go on. It's the Weasleys. The Weasley twins from Harry Potter. I know the minister talking about Harry Potter. Sorry, Mum. Right? Fred and George Weasley. Anybody know who these guys are? Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, in real life, they're not twins. And that might come as a real surprise to you, because they look so similar. Okay. But can anybody remember the movie in which they were twins? It was called Twins. Does anybody remember what their names were? I'll be very, very impressed. No? So this is Julius and Vincent. Julius and Vincent Benedict, and don't ask me which one's which. I'm guessing Hugh knew the answer there, and he just didn't shout it out. Right? Last one, and these are real life twins. Anybody know who these pair are? This was the last time we could get them to sit still for a photo together. This is, of course, Annie and Sophia, and let's play a little game. Which one's this? Very good. Who said Annie? That's Annie, and this is Sophia. And their wee things say, their wee baby girls say, we solemnly swear we are up to no good. Yeah. And they have been ever since. But today we're going to spend some time, you'll be glad to know we're not just going to play a game, right? We're going to spend some time in the scriptures, and today we're going to consider the first recorded set of twins in the Bible. Does anybody know who they are? So we have Cain and Abel. Who else? I've heard a right answer and a wrong answer. Jacob and Esau. Okay, so Cain and Abel weren't actually twins. It says in Genesis chapter 4 that sometime after Cain was born, Abel was born. So, not twins. But we're going to look together at the story of Jacob and Esau. So Isaac, who was Abraham's son, and remember we looked at that last week. Continuing on the story, Isaac then gets married. And he gets married to a woman by the name of Rebekah. And much like his mother had been, Rebekah was childless for many years. And as a result of that, Isaac prayed to the Lord that Rebekah might bear a child. And we're told that what followed was a double blessing. I like to imagine that Isaac went sheet white too, right? As Rebekah fell pregnant with not one but two children. As the kids fought hammer and tong inside the womb, Rebekah inquires of the Lord as to why on earth her pregnancy had been so difficult and why they were fighting within her womb. And we read these words in Genesis chapter 25 from verse 23. It says this, that when she asked, the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau, which means hairy. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob, which means deceiver. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. And the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. A man's man and a deceiver. A hunter and a mummy's boy. A mummy's boy who was coy and who would bide his time. Even right here we see a problem, don't we? The problem being that the parents had clear favourites. I am by no means a parenting expert, but I know that parenting 101 is that if you have more than one, you do not show favouritism, and you do not favourite one over the other. And Isaac and Rebekah had very clear favourites, and they didn't try and hide the fact that they had favourites. And these 2 boys who had been fighting in the womb, leading to what was probably a pretty horrific pregnancy for Rebekah, were always destined for a clash of personalities and a butting of heads somewhere along the way. There's no smoke without fire. It's going to come to a head at one stage or another. Now, don't get me wrong. Does anybody here have siblings? Anybody ever fight with their siblings? Yeah, it's pretty common, isn't it? Don't get me wrong. Siblings can fight and they can fall out. And if you want to know more about that, just ask Graham about the time he chased his brother around the house with an iron bar. But this was different. This was different. It started in the womb. And with your parents having clear favourites, I'm not so sure that the conditions could have led to anything but a big falling out somewhere down the line. The story continues as we read on in chapter 25, verse 29. It said, once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. And that is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. The wee deceiver, at it again, wanting something for what he was given. Look, I am about to die, Esau said. What good is the birthright to me? It's nothing quite like being dramatic, right? You ever been hungry and angry at the same time. Have you ever been angry because you're hungry? We call it hangry in our house, and it's actually in the dictionary now as well, not because it's what we call it in our house, it's been in the dictionary for a little while. Esau is so dramatic here. He's like, I'm so hungry I could die. So hungry I could die. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Now, a birthright was significant. It wasn't like today when wills were drafted and written up, and in most families at least, things were evenly divided among the siblings. Each thing meticulously siphoned off one way or another, sometimes in extreme detail with specific requests taking precedent and being legally enforced. It wasn't like that back then. Rather, the birthright was a God-given blessing which was bestowed upon the firstborn male of the family, which gave them the right to a double portion of his father's inheritance. So for Jacob here to coyly purchase this for a bowl of stew from Esau was no mean feat. I mean, come on, the stew couldn't have been that good, right? I mean, it was lentil stew. There wasn't even any meat in it. But as we journey through the rest of the story together, we'll hopefully begin to see that this is about a whole lot more than a bowl of stew. And it's a whole lot more than parents playing favourites. But rather, the story and the legacy of Jacob and Esau rather speaks loudly to the fallen condition of the human heart. But before we jump into application, which we will, we need to take the time to learn what happens next. We're told that some time has passed now. Isaac, the father, is getting older. His eyes are beginning to fail him quite drastically. But the pattern of the hunter, Esau, and the home help, Jacob, continues. And we're told that Esau is out in the open country hunting, and Jacob is at home tending to the tents. So, as was tradition, when the father knew that his time was short, he would call the firstborn to his side and ask him to prepare a meal for him, during which the blessing, that birthright, would be bestowed. And this was happening just as it would have in any other family, with Isaac and his family. Now, we're told a few verses before, at the end of chapter 26, that Esau had taken himself a wife by the name of Judith, and also another wife by the name of Basemath, who were both Hittites, and we're told that this reality, these marriages, really grieved not only Rebekah, his mother, but also Isaac, his father. And whilst Isaac was a man of tradition, who clearly favoured Esau over his brother Jacob, the opposite was true of Rebekah. So with the grief that Esau's marriages caused and her clear favouring of Jacob, Rebekah saw an opportunity. She saw an opportunity and she encouraged Jacob to take advantage of his father's poor eyesight. She told him to go and kill 2 choice goats and to cover his hands and his neck with goat skins, so that his father would truly believe that he was his hairy brother Esau. We're also told that as Jacob went and got the 2 choice goats, that although he was supposed to be the one who prepared the meal, that Rebekah prepared the meal for him, and prepared this meal for him to take to Isaac, that the blessing might be bestowed upon him quickly before Esau returned from his hunting. And so it was. We're told that everything went as Rebekah and Jacob had planned. Jacob was given the blessing and the birthright whilst Esau missed out. It wasn't a simple case of undoing the bestowing of the blessing, for this was a sacred ceremony with deep spiritual significance. So whenever Isaac would finally realize that he had been tricked, he couldn't simply undo what had been done, because it would undermine everything that he stood for and every tradition that they held to be true. But as Jacob is given the birthright, we read in Genesis 27 these words. And it's 27, verse 29. There's wrong up on the screen there. So from verse 30, it says, after Jacob finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, my father, please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing. His father Isaac asked him, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn, Esau. Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me too, my father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time that he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Then he asked, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Isaac answered Esau, I have made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants. I have sustained him with grain and with new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac addressed him. Your dwelling will be away from the earth's riches, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. Sorry, it was on the screen behind us and I didn't realize there. Right? We're then told that what happens is this, and you can follow on the story, that Jacob wisely runs away and gets out of Dodge. His brother is infuriated, and in some ways you can understand why, can't you? He is infuriated. He is seeing red. The hairy man is ready to kill. And Jacob runs away. His mother helps him, but the deceiver escapes, taking Esau's birthright and blessing with him. And the story of Jacob and Esau is a fascinating one. And with more time, we would dive deeper into the wider implications that this story has, not only in the immediacy of the events, but also for you and I today in the 21st century, and also how this whole story fits into the story that changes everything. But what does it mean for you and for I today? There are 3 key things, and you'll be glad to know each point is not as long as the last. But 3 things very quickly that we can learn from this story. The first one is this: that the spiritual blessings that God has to offer are far greater than the cheap thrills that the world offers in return. We read about Esau again later in the scriptures. And Hebrews, the book of Hebrews in chapter 10, it talks about how he is an example of ungodliness, of how he lived in such a way that he put his earthly desires and his earthly preferences above that which was important. Have you ever met somebody who doesn't look as far away into the future as their own nose? Like, have you ever met somebody like that? That everything revolves around them and their needs in that moment. And actually, whenever you dig a little deeper, it's not actually their needs at all. It's rather their wants, the things which they desire. We're told in the scriptures, this story that changes everything. We are told that the heart is deceitful above all things. Deceitful above all things, that it is desperately, desperately wicked. We live in a world where we're told constantly, time and time again, well, do you know what? Just follow your heart. Follow your heart. Do what seems right to you. You live your truth. Sometimes, whenever we read the story of Jacob and Esau, you may have heard me even earlier say, Esau's being a little bit dramatic. I'm so hungry I could die. Oh. The reality is he's a big hunter. He's a well-built fellow. Yes, he's probably feeling the pangs of hunger, but he's probably got a good week of storage up there as long as he drinks some water. And sometimes we can be a little bit like that. And it might not be about food. The reality is it's probably never about food. But we live in a society, don't we? And we're influenced, if we're not careful, by a society that wants everything now. We want it now. Do you remember last week, whenever we were reminded, looking at the story of Abraham and Sarah and Isaac, that God is never late, nor is he early, but he arrives precisely when he means to. God is very deliberate. And we are promised throughout the scriptures that every spiritual blessing is ours in Christ Jesus. We are promised and we are told that he knows. He knows what we need. And I don't know if we actually got to sing it, but in the song Good, Good Father, it says, you know just what we need before we say a word. Sometimes the tendency for us as human beings is that we want everything snappy. We want it now. We're not willing to wait. We're not willing to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. We're not willing to go, well, actually, God, you know what? I don't understand what is happening right now, and I don't know why I'm going through what I'm going through right now, but I know that you do. And I know that your plans are still to prosper, that you've not forgotten about me. It was Corrie ten Boom who famously said, and I'm paraphrasing her because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, that actually, we need to trust the teacher as we do the test. But similarly, that as we are going through a tunnel on a train, we trust the driver to get us to our destination, don't we? Even though the surroundings are dark, Even though we cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel, we still trust the driver. I don't know if any of you have ever driven through the Eurotunnel that goes from London to Paris. Across there, it is dark and it is dingy. But you know, if you keep driving straight, you're going to end up on the other side. And today I just sense that the Lord is saying, don't chase the cheap thrills that life has to offer. Don't chase the lies that society and the great deceiver, Satan, tells us. Because we've said it before, sin is a dangerous cycle. Every time I look at a box of Pringles, a tube of Pringles, and I know that Audrey loves Pringles, every time I look at them, I cannot help but think about the word that the Lord gave me a couple of years ago of the comparison between the two. The tagline for Pringles is, once you pop, you just can't stop. And so it is with cheap thrills. So it is with sin in our lives. Very quickly, one becomes two, and two becomes three, and before you know, you're at the bottom of the tube. Look at me. It's happened more than once. But today, Esau sold his birthright and the blessing of God for a bowl of lentil stew. Do you know what his blessing and birthright was? This blessing and birthright that was passed on. And this brings us to our second point, that our past mistakes need not define your future. You see, the blessing that was passed from Isaac on to Jacob was this. Jacob became known as Israel. God met him and gave him a new name. And from him, he had 12 sons. And we're going to look at one of those sons next week by the name of Joseph. Right? But by this blessing that was passed on, Jacob becomes Israel. And from his line, it takes us to David, who was the first king, well, the first proper king, the second king of Israel, the great king. And from David's line came Jesus. Right? So if you go all the way back, what did Esau sell that bowl of stew, that birthright for a bowl of stew? It was so much more than a birthright. He was supposed to be a part of the line from whom the Messiah would come. But he missed out on all of that. But Jacob, the deceiver, he who really stole it, we're told as we read on in the book of Genesis that he had an encounter with God. That not only did God give him a new name, but God gave him an almighty promise. He said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you, and I will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. This is what he had said to his father Isaac. But then it says in Genesis 28, God says, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then it says, when Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. And then a few verses down, it says, then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey, I am taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household. Then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. You see, even though he was a wee bit of a rascal, even though he was a deceiver, even though he stole from his brother, even though he dishonored his family and dishonored his father, when God presented him with a second chance, as he does each one of us, Jacob was able to put it right. And he was able to put it right not because of who he was, but because of who God was. And because of who God is. And I know, as I have the privilege of being your pastor, as I have conversations with you, many of you still lament over things that happened years and years and years ago. And this morning, the Lord says to each one of us, your past does not define you. I do. And you want to know how God defines you? He made the deceiver his prized possession. And he looks at you and he calls you my beloved. He says, wanderer, come on home. He says, let's leave the past in the past. Because whenever we come to him, and whenever we accept that he is God and we are not, and whenever we repent of our wrongdoing, we are told that he throws our past into the sea of forgetfulness, never to be held against us by him again. Past mistakes need not define your future. For you are, and I am, we are the beloved of God. And one last thing we see is this, and with this we close. Let's see that mess that you're in right now. See that mess that you perhaps know is coming round the corner. That thing that's crippling you with fear, even if you don't admit it to anybody else. God is always in the business of making a message out of our mess. God is always in the business of making a message out of our mess on one condition: that we get out of our own way and we let him do it. So this morning, whatever you're going through, whatever somebody stole from you, whatever the thing is that you're clinging on to and lamenting about, beating yourself up about time and time and time again, you need not carry it anymore. That thing that seems so attractive, that shiny thing in the corner that's grabbing your attention and perhaps causing you to take your eyes off Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith, know this, that it's lentil stew and it won't last. But the spiritual blessings that he offers are yours in Christ Jesus, if only you'll take them. Your past need not define your future. And know that wherever you find yourself right now, our wonderful, mighty, strong God is in the business of making a message out of our mess. You see, the tests that you're enduring right now, the difficulties, it may not be God who gave you them. It may have been our own foolishness. It may have been a result of a fallen world, whatever that test might be. But God is always in the business, not only of making a message out of a mess, but making a testimony to his goodness and his grace out of the tests that we endure. So take heart today. Take heart, for God is in this place. But may we not be like Jacob and say, I did not know it. Rather, may we know and be glad, for he is good and perfect in every way. As the worship team come, let's just pray together.